Why would I, who grew up in the beautiful tropical climate of Bangalore, which looks like this all through the year, move to Canada in this cold weather? Here's some coffee time. In this video, I'm going to tell you why me as a doctor from India decided to move to Canada, and then finally why I left Canada for the USA. Keep watching and let's do this together. I grew up in the city of Bangalore and I did my MBBS from Bangalore Medical College. We had a fantastic time with friends. Used to watch a lot of Hollywood movies. When I finished my MBBS, I was pretty determined to do residency in India. So I took the exams. Of course, as you know, you have to score really high on those exams to get any residency programs. And anesthesia was one of my top choice because I was under the impression then that once you do your 3 years of anesthesia residency, you're good to go. You don't need to do any specializations. I was, of course, not correct. There is no specialty that does not require a specialization. I wrote the exams for All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, PGI or Chandigarh, and I was fortunate to get into anesthesia in PGI Chandigarh. Looking back, this was a fantastic choice. Now, as I've seen more and more IMGs, I've also realized many countries do have outstanding programs in their own respective countries, and many IMGs we see have so fantastic credentials. I mean, they have done so many things, not only just clinical, but also on the research side, on the education side. So they have an overall really well-built CV. As I was moving through the residency program in anesthesiology from PGI Chandigarh, I realized there were many folks who wanted to go outside India and either settle outside or do some extra training. So because I was always pretty clear about staying back in India, of course, which did not happen, I decided to do 1 year fellowship outside India. As a part of this, I started exploring all the available anesthesia fellowships outside India. During those times, there was no IMG secrets like how you guys have today, that we can help you with your application and with your career guidance. So I had to do all the homework on my own and I gathered all the information. You know, I'm thinking like most of you that I want to go to a country where I don't have to write any exams. This is when I realized actually there are two countries that do not need any exams. One was Canada, the other one was Australia. In fact, it is still true even today that you do not need any examinations to do a fellowship in Canada. However, Australia has changed their requirement and the expectation is you do the AMC exams. But if you're focused on Canada and you want to apply for a fellowship, you can certainly do without any exams. And we have helped quite a few IMGs do this and also be successful in getting interviews and positions. Alright, so I craft an application. I send it to reputed centers around Canada and Australia. I did get an interview invite from one of the places in Australia, but this happened to be for an ICU fellowship. I wasn't too keen on an ICU fellowship, and I did get an interview offer from University of Toronto, the prestigious University of Toronto, for a fellowship in anesthesia. So I did a phone interview, which is what used to happen in those days. Now all the interviews happen through a video call. All right, so I do the interview. I get an email saying I have been offered a fellowship position. It was very exciting because I was now moving out of India for the very first time. In the meanwhile, I finished my senior residency, which is the training one would do after finishing the actual residency or PG in anesthesia at PGI Chandigarh. And then I did have a few months of work left, so I decided to take up a job in Bangalore and I went to quite a few different hospitals. So finally I did end up spending a few months at Fortis in cardiac ICU, and simultaneously I also did some private practice, which is jumping from one hospital to the other, which is referred to as locums or moonlighting in the US and Canada. As all this was going through, I started getting paperwork from University of Toronto. Now the plan was there were two things I needed. I needed a license from the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. This was a training license that I would need as a clinical fellow. The second thing I needed was a visa. Now I get all the paperwork, and then I started sending all the necessary documents, which is essentially stating that my school or my medical college was recognized by WHO and all that usual criteria. And I do get an approval that I'll be getting a training license, and then I also get paperwork to get my visa stamped. Now I remember since I was in PG at Chandigarh, I decided to go to the Canadian Embassy in Chandigarh and had my visa stamped there. So I was ready to travel to Canada. So first time doing an international travel, if you're in the same boat as me, you might imagine how exciting it is, and also it can be quite nervous because you do not know what to expect. So I talked to quite a few people what to know, and then I did end up buying some warm clothes that, of course, coming from Bangalore, going to Canada, and you would need that. All right, so all the preparations for moving to Canada are on, and I book a plane ticket. Now this plane, as I remember, was British Airways. That flew from Bangalore to Heathrow in UK, and Heathrow to Toronto with one stop in Heathrow. So I sit in the plane. I clear customs immigrations in India. I'm pretty excited. And I land in Heathrow. I'm seeing this Heathrow airport for the first time. I was so excited seeing everything. Now here it is with me after so many years of experience. I have realized traveling to so many different countries that Heathrow airport is unfortunately not one of the best airports in the world. It's a disaster. It's overcrowded. People are not friendly. So I now avoid going to Heathrow as much as possible and take other destinations if I can. Okay, fantastic. I land in Toronto now. Now, this was probably like 8 p.m. in the night. When I took the flight in Bangalore, it was plus 25 degrees Celsius. When I landed in Toronto that night on January 1st, it was minus 25 degrees Celsius. I'm like, I thought maybe I heard it wrong, but actually it was minus 25 degrees Celsius, a gradient or a delta of 50 degrees Celsius. After landing in Canada is where I actually got my work permit. Now I had the visa stamped before, but I had to spend quite some time in the airport, in the line, answering a lot of questions to actually get my work permit. The work permit was a sheet of paper that was stapled to my passport, and my wife actually got what is called as an open work permit, which in theory would let her work most jobs, I should say, with some restrictions. Great. Now I am in Toronto. I started my fellowship. The initial few weeks was pretty rough. I have to admit this. This is because I was new to the system. There is a huge cultural differences between what happened in India and what happened in Canada. And this is exactly what we do. We coach you guys so you don't need to go through all the painful things that I and my experts went through. So you really become someone at the next level. Anyway, what all I went through would probably be a topic for a different video. Now, bottom line, the transition is not always easy. So I continued my fellowship. I was having a great time. I became productive, not only, of course, in clinical care, but also in research and education. But my passion was always in doing a fellowship in pediatric anesthesia. So I applied for a pediatric anesthesia fellowship while I was in Toronto. Now, this is the key thing. When you're already there in Canada, you apply for another fellowship, the chances of getting are significantly more than applying from your home country. So it's always that first fellowship you have to break in to get through the door in Canada. Is this making sense? And this is what we coach our IMGs as to how they can break that first barrier to get into Canada. I went and spoke to the program director. They really liked me as a candidate, and I was offered a fellowship in pediatric anesthesia at University of Toronto. Now this was at the prestigious Hospital for Sick Children, or Sick Kids as it's called. This hospital is the oldest children's hospital in Canada, plus one of the oldest children's hospital around the world. So it's considered very prestigious to train from there. As I was moving through these fellowships, I finished my USMLE steps. So I finished USMLE Step 1, Step 2 CK, Step 2 CS that used to be there in those days that I took from Philadelphia, and I became ECFMG certified. Both my Step 1 and Step 2 were taken in Toronto, Canada. Now, as I was moving through my pediatric anesthesia fellowship, this is when I realized the USA has an option called alternate entry path for certification, where IMGs like me and you can directly come to the USA and do not have to do residency all over again. I thought this was fantastic. And as I also recognized a similar pathway exists in Canada, which I refer to as the province-based specialist pathway. Now, I have left the links for these videos in the description below that I encourage you to check once you're done with this video. So then I started applying to a couple of places asking for a consultant or an attending physician position in the USA. I get an interview from Cincinnati. This is a hospital affiliated with the University of Cincinnati. Now, the boss there actually really liked me, which I'm very thankful to him about. He did offer me a job in anesthesia through the alternate entry path program. Now I'm in a position where I have a job in the USA, I have a job in Canada. Now, this is actually really getting into why I made the move from Canada to the USA. And this is what I realized. As an IMG from India, if you end up staying in Canada as a province-based specialist, you will never be recognized by the Royal College of Canada. On the other hand, if you're an IMG from India who come through the alternate entry path program in the USA, you're completely recognized by the American boards. This was a big thing for me. So this is a major decision why I moved to the USA from Canada. Now, what should you be doing? If you're in my exact same position, then moving to the USA makes sense. But if you're already settled in Canada through the province-based specialist pathway, or you're exploring Canada because you have family there, that is a very reasonable option too. And just because someone is not certified by Royal College, I have personally not seen anyone having any problems because of that. Well, now here I am after all these years in the USA. I became board certified in anesthesiology. I became board certified in pediatric anesthesiology based on my fellowship from Canada. And I did get a full license even before I moved to the USA based on my training in India and based on my training in Canada. And this is exactly what we coach you all to just follow my path or our path to become successful in your career. And sure, if you want to speak to me or one of our experts, you can always go to our website and book an appointment from there. All right, years pass by and I become a green card holder in the USA through EB1, and I do have a specific video made for that. I encourage you to check that out from the description below. I do have a link here on how you can be a doctor in the USA and what are the different paths available. There are some that require USMLE, and there are some rare exceptions where USMLE is not required that we share one-on-one to our IMGs who really qualify for that, but those are exceptional cases. And any questions, do post in the comments below. Take care, stay safe, we will talk to you soon.